Dhanpal, thank you very much for joining me today. So tell us about EverSource Capital, the work that you're doing, the kind of funds that you're deploying, what are the areas that you're looking at in your journey so far?
Govind, first of all, thanks for having me here. We're very excited about what we're doing with EverSource Capital. We set this up as a joint venture between Everstone, which is one of India's leading private capital managers, and the Lightsource BP Group, which is one of the global renewable development companies. The purpose of this joint venture was really to raise a climate fund for India. We ended up raising possibly the largest single country climate fund in the developing markets. We closed it last year with about $750 million with two primary purposes, which is essentially to invest in energy transition and resource efficiency. Now, these two themes cover a large part of the whole climate change challenge and largely focus on reducing the entire carbon footprint across these two themes. So we've now invested in 7 companies. We have what is called a controlled growth strategy, essentially setting up platforms ourselves, investing capital and then growing them, or buying businesses which we would own and control and essentially driving growth in these businesses. And across these 7 businesses, we have 2 in the renewable sector, 2 in the mobility sector, 1 in environmental services, 1 in water, and 1 in the climate finance space.
So of this, if I would ask you, what would be the biggest bet and what would be the biggest investment, and would both be the same?
Great question. We first of all don't think of investing as betting because we are really
No, when I say bet, I mean more like when you're looking more further out as opposed to something which is more, let's say, right with us.
So all our businesses happen at a time, or investments happen at a time where we believe that there are 3 things. One is there is an economic model which is sustainable without any kind of external support. There are commercial returns that one can make through that. 2 is there is a rapid scalability that comes through a ready market and which can happen in a very short 3 to 5 year period. And 3 is that because we own and control these platforms, that we can drive a lot of the outcomes in the businesses themselves. So if you look at it, I would say a third of our capital has gone into renewables, a third has gone into mobility. Water and climate finance are the newer kind of sectors where we do believe they'll take some more time before we really get to more scale over there.
Right, and that answers that question. So when you look at the ecosystem, which I'm sure you're also trying to build at the same time, where do you see the biggest gaps today that either policy or those, or let's say maybe other investors and other peers have to come in and maybe participate or invest in?
So we are seeing 2 very clear trends. One is, and I almost call it a barbell strategy. One is that there is a massive surge in the startup ecosystem focused on climate tech or clean tech as they call it. And we are seeing therefore a lot of young entrepreneurs come out and looking to either adopt or create new technologies or business models which address market needs, and capital now which is beginning to flow into that space. The second is really on the large corporate or the India Inc. side, where you're seeing India Inc. aggressively looking to invest capital, and therefore you're seeing massive announcement being made by many of the large corporate groups. And that is again being driven not through their own capital, but also large investors coming in, putting hundreds and billions of dollars to work through that. But there is a massive growth market in between, where there is an almost complete vacuum. And that's the market where we are really looking to address through this controlled growth strategy, where we're really building businesses, but we are addressing that growth market through scaled business models.
Right. So you talked about renewables and you also talked about mobility apart from water. So in this, what in your mind is the closest or already at market stage, as in where it's all operating fully on market principles in terms of without, let's say, lower subsidies and consumer demand and consumer acceptance?
So if you look at just renewable energy as a subsector, and within that if you look at both wind and solar, from 10 years ago where a solar plant would essentially generate electricity at 17, 18 rupees, today solar is already the lowest cost or form of energy at about 2.5 rupees. What we are seeing as a result of that, there is a significant amount of capital which has flowed there, and a lot of that capital now is really pricing a much lower risk on that particular capital, and therefore becoming extremely competitive in terms of the outcomes that one is achieving over there. In the mobility sector, we believe that mass mobility has already got to an inflection point where without much support, there is a real need, and that need is being met through very competitive business models using electric as a fuel source to deliver mobility services. Personal mobility, I yet believe there's a little bit of runway to build scale and to a point where people are going to switch, and the switching costs are not going to be greater than what the costs are today vis-a-vis buying ICE engine vehicles. There are many other areas we're looking at, again, say in the water space, where we do believe today water is largely, especially at the consumer end, is largely a subsidized play. But at the industrial end, water is already becoming extremely expensive and also resource constrained. And that's where we are seeing, again, water around desalination, water treatment, recycling, all of those models coming up over there. So this is all what I call on the energy transition space. On the resource efficiency side, we do believe that one of the biggest drivers for change is going to be on just making the existing resources, whether it's energy, water, waste, etc., reusable, recyclable, and repurposable. And that's an area where, again, technology, along with the right market models, is playing a very interesting role in creating scaled businesses. One business we have is in waste management, for example, where we are essentially taking all forms of organic waste, using scaled biodigestion technologies, and actually creating zero waste processes where the gas which we are able to extract, which is methane converting into natural gas, the solid, which is essentially organic, can be converted and made into biofertilizers, and the liquid effluent, which essentially after being treated can be repurposed either back into industrial or commercial use or back into the river systems to essentially charge the water networks, all of it resulting in zero waste coming out of that particular plant. All of these commercially viable and imminently marketable in terms of a need from a market perspective.
Right. So, as you've said, the demand or the level of entrepreneurship interest and desire is clearly rising now, and quite dramatically. And and a lot of venture capitalists are also in some ways fueling it in a good way. What's your advice to those who want to enter this space, and for what reasons should they or should they not do so?
As entrepreneurs or investors?
Entrepreneurs.
Look, I think one has to, if you think about it, there are many ways to slice the problem and create solutions around it. And if you look at many of the enabling factors, whether it be the regulations, whether it be very high corporate interest in terms of being consumers as well as essentially participants and supporters, and then from the banking and financial and the investing community, a need to put capital, purpose capital, which is coming into play over here. So I would say the enabling factors are all in place today for entrepreneurs to really identify the right business opportunities to go after. And I do believe there is a lot of it. I believe, the opportunity or the talent leads and capital follows. So ecosystem today is very ready.
It's ripe.
It's absolutely at a stage where I think over the next 5 years, you're going to see it's kind of what happened with demonetization in 2016. A combination of already a data-driven mobile network, the fact that we had the ability to digitally identify people through Aadhaar, and then finally the digitization of capital itself, financed through the UPI, created this revolution in the entire e-commerce space. A combination, like I said, of what the government is doing, the capital available, and the fact that there is a market need today which can create business models, which can deliver services efficiently, is right out there.
Right. So that's the good thing. So what is it that entrepreneurs should not do then? Because the temptation is obviously to jump in to exactly the kind of ecosystem that you've now described, because it's so ripe.
So I think the biggest, is I would say, at absolutely the grassroots levels, many of the kind of businesses that I see today try to address problems, right, in a way where there is no immediate market, which means that the duration that they have to go through to actually convert that problem into a solution where there is a ready market is much longer. So if anyone is trying to address those kind of problems, I would say that they should think about a longer horizon for which they have to survive first. The second is that India in many ways is the right sandbox in which to create these business models, but the markets in many times are much more ready globally. Okay, so even if you are trying to basically build something and test it out in the Indian market, through early cases or customers, you should think about whether there is an immediate transportability of this model in a global market, and therefore constantly think as to where can I really find the immediate customer. Because think about this is a global challenge, and it's therefore a global opportunity. It's not just an Indian opportunity. But can we apply Indian ingenuity to real world problems and bring in both technology and define a customer at scale?
Okay, two last questions. So first is, how do you personally keep yourself abreast in this space?
It's crazy. I think the fact is that we use digital tools extensively. We're constantly connected in this world. We have, both through our global ecosystems at Everstone and LightSource, have a deep connect into many of the stakeholder groups. So whether it be the multilateral agencies who are again at the forefront of climate and driving a lot of purpose capital into that sector, whether it be through large corporates, say interested corporates, oil and gas industry, large industrial houses like cement, steel, etc., all driving that, and again our connects through those kind of ecosystems. And then finally, I would think that the technology industry, right, where we have many players today who through influencer groups and through my own networks, right, whether it be entrepreneurial networks, technology networks, who we are able to leverage on to understand what's happening in new technology, right, battery chemistries, tech stacks which are driving mobility solutions, or new forms of renewable energy production, whether it be solar, going from mono to poly to edge jetty and other technologies which are coming in to improve the ability to convert that solar radiation into renewable energy. There are many things happening, and we have to constantly be at the frontier, at the same time, build real business models which have real, market needs, and deliver those at very competitive, pricings. So,
right. So I wish you all the best for that. And the last question: what do you want to, would you like to take away or want to take away from an event like this or a gathering like this?
What I really took away is, most interestingly, the fact that there is a broader narrative. And if you look at the cohort of people who've come over here, they've come from all walks of life. There are young professionals, there are investors, there are large corporates all over here today. And I think the 4 C's, whether it's the country, the corporate, the citizen, and capital, all coming together and converging in this kind of a forum. The need that I would say the noise and the kind of conversations around this have to go mainstream, and the fact like these kind of conferences are creating and making it mainstream is where I think the real benefit of these kind of forums is.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here, Dhanpal.
Thank you, Govind.